Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest, Sydney Weiss. Sydney is a lawyer and the producer behind Seek the Joy podcast and stories of inspiring joy. Every week, Sydney sits down with thought leaders in health, wellness, mindfulness, and empowering conversations, as well as heartfelt storytellings on all the things like self-love, joy, connection, empowerment, and wellness. Sydney's greatest mission is to uplift and empower others to find their authentic voice, encourage them to step into their vulnerability and courage, all to seek their joy and bring about a greater world. Through Seek the Joy and stories of inspiring joy, she's been able to do just that. All right, welcome to the show, Sydney.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
And this show actually came about from my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this last, 13, 14 months, we have had situations that are unimaginable that we could not even fathom before. Yeah. And so I like to start off with maybe if you have a time in your business or personal life where you had to overcome a tough situation and how you got back on track.
There's been so many. I think we all face these moments of adversity, of challenge. And I think it's about always how we, pick ourselves back up, as your title of your book so wonderfully suggests. But I think, the biggest moment for me happened in 2016. So we've got to go back about 5 years. I was preparing to graduate from law school, and about a month or so before I had shingles. And it was kind of the first time my body sort of spoke to me and said, hey, you need to slow down. You're really stressed out. Maybe things are you're not moving in the way that you're supposed to. And I was 25 at the time, and I kind of thought really not much of it. I figured, it's a health thing that comes up, as one does. I graduated from law school. Shingles was gone. I sat and studied for the California bar exam, which at the time was 3 really gruel, very intense days. And you study for about 10 weeks. And I had put my mind and my body through the ringer, studying, upwards of 16 hours a day, not taking breaks, not nourishing myself properly, not seeing the sun. I just was so afraid of this exam and in such deep fear. And so by the time I sat for the bar exam in July of that summer, I came out of that experience the sickest I had been in my entire life. I had, my health was not where it was supposed to be. Mentally, I wasn't in a good place. A month later, I had appendicitis. So again, my body was like, hello, wake up. Like, this is not great. You're not taking good care of yourself. You're not tuning in a way that you needed to. That still was not the wake-up call for me. It really wasn't until November when I found out I did not pass the California bar exam, that I finally got it. That everything in my world, the way that I saw it, kind of was my rock bottom. Because for my whole life, I had based who I was and my self-worth on the external, on how I performed on an exam, what school I got into, what other people thought of me. And here I was, I didn't pass this licensure exam that I needed to practice law. I had been preparing for it my whole life. I was really sick and still recovering from surgery and having a really difficult time. And it wasn't until about a month or so later when I realized, okay, we have to pick ourselves back up and figure this out. I'm a big believer in allowing yourself to experience whatever emotions you were experiencing in the moment. So for me, it was really important to feel bad and to feel that shame or feel that embarrassment and feel that disappointment. And then I decided, okay, let's move through this. I went through a sort of 9-month metamorphosis and journey with myself, learning to take better care of my health, learning to take better care of me mentally, emotionally. And so by the time I sat for the bar the second time in July 2017, was a totally different person. I was not in fear of this exam. I was like, I'm going to conquer you. You're not going to conquer me. I'm going to conquer you. And I really had to learn how to shift my mindset in a really powerful way so that I was able to move forward. It wasn't until about 2 months after I sat for the bar that I had this idea. I really wanted to connect with other people who had similar stories and experiences, or who are doing what you and I are doing right now, Sheila, and just having a really wonderful conversation. And I thought, I'm going to start a podcast. That's what I'm going to do. And so within 2 weeks, I launched Seek the Joy podcast. I had the idea, the name, the whole thing. And for me, Seek the Joy has really been this incredibly healing journey and experience. In November of 2017, I found out I passed the bar exam, so I became a lawyer, which was a huge moment for me. But my self-worth was no longer wrapped up in how I performed. So I knew even if I didn't pass, I would be okay. I would figure it out. I would pick myself up and do it again. So my journey of having this podcast, which has come from my rock bottom moments and learning how to pick myself back up and continue to seek my joy, has really existed simultaneously. So it's been really wonderful.
Wow, that is quite a journey. And
Yeah.
anybody who passes the bar, hats off. I know my best friend took it a few times, I think, and finally passed it. It's really tough.
It is extremely tough. And, more than anything, I think it's a mental game. Obviously you need to show you are able to retain all this material and apply it. But ultimately, given the way it's set up, it's all about your mentality and your ability, I think, to push through and believe in yourself more than anything. So yeah, it's not uncommon, I think, too, to take it more than once. So hats off to your friend too. That's incredible.
Yes, yes. So I am wondering now, you've been doing the Seek the Joy podcast and Inspiring Joy.
Yeah, stories of inspiring joy. I've been doing Seek the Joy for about 3.5 years, and I've had stories of inspiring joy for about a year. And stories of inspiring joy was really based on a series I had on Seek the Joy for about 2.5 years. It was called The Power of Storytelling. And people would come on and just share who they are and share their story uninterrupted. And I loved that series on the show because it was so healing and cathartic for people to come on and share either a moment of adversity or something they overcame, how they wrote their book, their music, poetry, whatever. And then 2020 hit, and this series was booked 10 months in advance. And I was like, this is not sustainable. I can't have someone signing up in February for something to come out in November. So I thought, all right, we're going to start a second podcast. And so that's how Stories of Inspiring Joy was born. We're about a year into it. I've shared over 100 stories, and each one is really powerful and has left a wonderful impression on me. So it's been fun.
Wow. Now, how does that come into alignment with your law business now, with what you're doing for work? How do you balance those two?
It's an interesting journey balancing both being a lawyer as well as a producer and podcaster. But truthfully, it has been such a beautiful compliment, and I wouldn't have it any other way. When I was 12, I was one of those kids who just decided they wanted to be a lawyer. I had no real reason. I just woke up one day and was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm going to do. And so everything I did, from that moment on was to get me to law school. And it really wasn't until the last year when I sat down with myself and I thought, why law? Why did I go to law school? And I realized from a very young age, I wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to be an advocate for myself. I wanted to be an advocate for others. And when I was 12, the only model I had for advocacy were lawyers. I didn't know that you could be an advocate through storytelling, through creating intentional spaces for people to really show up as who they are and to shine, I think, their light the brightest. And so for me, I'm now figuring out I really want to be an advocate through storytelling, and I want to be an advocate by creating this space I've created with the podcast. And so it's really been a beautiful compliment, having both at the same time.
Yes.
Lots of things I learned in law school and use in my everyday life, I apply to, being a podcaster and a producer. And it's really, it's been a beautiful compliment for me. But stepping into that knowing about advocacy has been the biggest game changer for me, because it makes me understand a little bit more about myself and why I'm doing this, and why it's also important to me.
I think that's the key, is when you are doing your work and you're on purpose to help other people, then you wake up and you have this reason for getting out of bed. It's just a different thing, and everything that you need shows up. The time you need, the sponsors, whatever you need to continue, always shows up in perfect time. And so it's kind of going with a heart-based business, heart-based work, and how that can connect to everything that we're doing as an advocate. You're helping people in all you're doing. Now, how does your self-care, how does that look now that you've, got your degree and you're working and you've got some balance going? Are you able to take care of your health and find time for yourself?
Like anything else, it's a constant journey. It's a constant process, and it's been a journey with a lot of trial and error, if I'm going to be very honest. I think now I'm in the best place with my health than I've been in a really long time, and it's because I've had to be very intentional about it. I am somebody that when I get an idea and I want to do something, I rush to that computer and I sit there forever, and I've really had to teach myself, we need to take breaks. You need to walk. You need to move. You need to eat. You need to drink water. And so sometimes, I've got to set a reminder on my phone to make sure I do it. But I definitely think I'm in a much better place now with my own personal self-care. And, through the podcast, I've had so many conversations with people about their self-care and what does that look like. And what I'm really learning is self-care is really holistic. It's mind, body, and soul. It's so much deeper than what we often talk about in mainstream media or society. And so for me, having that lens and knowing that self-care is going to be holistic and needs to be holistic has actually helped me to alleviate any pressure that I might have put on myself. Often I think, especially when you're in a self-care, self-love journey, learning to speak to yourself with more kindness, if you have a day where you fall off the wagon, you feel really bad about it. You're like, I put in all this work to mess up this one time. The truth is it's a journey. You go up and down, you have highs and lows. And so giving myself that level of grace and patience has been huge, and knowing you can just try again tomorrow. So I've definitely gotten so much better, treat myself with a lot more kindness than I did probably when I was in law school or even undergrad. And it's made a huge difference, but I am constantly learning just to go with the flow and not be so hard on myself.
That's so important. And for anyone listening in, if you have a business or a career, like something in the legal field that you're going to be required to sometimes over focus because you've got to, go to court tomorrow. So you might have to stay up late or do something different to get everything you need together. Then make sure that you give yourself a buffer of time in your schedule where you have that day to recharge, or half a day, or whatever you can, and put yourself in that schedule like you're a client. Yes, because
I love that.
we tend to forget, and it's really easy when the over focus of being able to serve so many other people shows up and serves you to get your degree, to help so many people with what you do. Then we often forget that also can hurt us, even though it served us for so many years, if we don't take charge. So you've already set your timers, and you have ways of pulling yourself away to get back on track with yourself. And so that's something, I don't know, all the business people I know that are super successful, they get really focused on whatever they're doing. And sometimes it's so easy to forget to eat, or to not eat, or to go exercise, or to, get some sunshine, or all, that maybe the family in the other room wants your attention. And you're like, well, I'm working on this project. And that's how you become so successful. So it's kind of it causes confliction many times for business leaders in any field. And so when you're able to be present at work, and then present at home with the family, and present for your self-care, or present with your friends, that's going to make a difference over the long term. Or else you're with your family and friends and you're thinking about maybe a court case or whatever your business is, and then when you're at the business you're thinking, oh, I should have given my friends or family more time. Then you're not really 100% in either place, and that's like the worst place to be, and everybody's upset because they're like, hey, I need your presence. Yes.
I think that's so interesting. It's all about, how do I remain present in this moment instead of thinking about the thing that's due, or the thing I forgot to do, or, the deadline. And I think over the last year, we have really been thinking more about that. How do I stay present in this moment? It is so much harder than I think a lot of people make it seem, especially when you are overwhelmed, you have a lot going on. And I am certainly someone that's still trying to figure that out. I mean, sometimes that means I put the phone away. Like, I literally tuck it under the mattress so we're not looking at it. You turn the phone off and you tuck it away. Otherwise, you feel like compelled, to constantly check it and tune in. And what are your friends doing? What's going on with the emails, with social media? You're so right. It's really about, how do I stay present in this moment? So later on, I know, okay, I gave my family my attention. Now it's my time to give my work my attention. Now it's my time to give myself my attention. I think about it as like those sort of three buckets. And, I feel like sometimes we're constantly pouring from one bucket into the other, but it's like, how can we make it even across the board for ourselves? So we don't feel, pulled in one direction, or overwhelmed, or overloaded. It is quite a journey figuring that out.
Yes, and this year has been so interesting, a reminder, this universal pause to
Yeah.
really slow down and have that family time. I had one of my daughters moved home, and some of my other kids visit more often. It's one of those situations where family time, you realize what matters most. And as a mom, I'm like, I'm enjoying every second of this family time. And the universities are finally opening up in the fall, and I'm like, I'm going to miss you.
I know. I kind of feel that way too. The last year has definitely been difficult and has really challenged us. And I think, if anything, we learned what's really important. Just like you said, it's really our health and our family. Because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. And then if you don't have the ones you love, life doesn't have that same sense of fulfillment. And for a lot of us, we were on this hamster wheel, especially with work and with our businesses or our passion projects of, the foot was permanently on the accelerator. And I think for the first time as a collective, as a global community, we had to say, wait, hold on. If you keep that foot on the accelerator, it's not going to serve you. And so I feel the same way. I have a little apprehension about going back out into the world. I have loved my time at home, nurturing myself, nurturing projects that I'm really excited about, being with my family. But I think it's, for me, especially, it's about taking the lessons of the last year and that sense of nurturing, and how can I apply it to every aspect of my life, including the aspects of my life that require me to be outside of the home, that require me to be present in new ways. And it's going to be interesting to see how we can sort of integrate those lessons that we learned personally, but then also as a collective, as we start to immerse back into the world again and return to whatever this new normal is going to be.
Yes, I remember finally when the stores were open again and we were actually able to go buy an outfit.
Yes.
And we were like, this is so exciting. The mall.
All the things we kind of took for granted before, right? All of a sudden are so new and exciting and shiny. And it's so interesting. It's crazy.
A trip to Target was exciting at first.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, they're letting us in the stores now. This is great. We can get socks or whatever. My new puppy ate all the socks.
Oh, I love that. Did you get a puppy within the last year?
Yes, we did. We adopted a golden doodle, and that first year with a puppy is a lot of work. So we both did need to be home full time for that.
Yeah,
I
believe it.
And now she kind of owns us, and she is incredible. My daughter said that was our therapy dog. I lost my youngest son in December of 2019. He was 22. He had a heart situation. It was Wolf Parkinson, and he just didn't wake up one day. And we were always worried. We almost lost him in 5th grade. So with that, my daughter's like, we need to get a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I
Mm-hmm.
need to hug a dog, and we
Your
need.
daughter was so right.
Yes, and I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'll get you a dog. What's the dog sleeps in my bed? Okay, you needed a dog. I think she got the dog for me. I mean, they're best friends too, but it just so
Mm-hmm.
happens that that's the way it I don't know, it turned out. So
Yeah. I'm so sorry for your loss.
yeah,
Really, that's so difficult. I'm so glad that you were all able to find the companionship though through getting a puppy, a quarantine puppy.
yes, yes,
So healing. I love that.
yes, and we have 2 rescue kitties as well.
Oh,
So we've
you have
got
a full house.
we really do. Yes, yes. So good. So that's something. Now I'd love to hear maybe some examples of your program and what the inspiring joy, and what are some of the stories that really stuck out in your mind
Mm,
that affected you or made a
yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Okay. There's so many. I don't even know where to begin. In the last 3.5 years of having Seek the Joy podcast, and that's really an interview focused show, I've sat down with some really like incredible people, and people I would never have really had the opportunity to meet, get to know, and truthfully become friends with, which has been so wonderful. And I think, especially in the context of the conversation we're having now about the last year and stepping into greater self-care for yourself, there's a couple conversations I've had. One was with John Clarence Stewart, and he's an actor. He's right now he plays Simon on Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and we had a beautiful conversation on art and creativity as healing,
Mm.
and how we can use it as part of our healing journey to step into our voice, to step into who we really are. And I mean, I loved that conversation because especially it gave me such an interesting perspective on healing for men or those who identify with the male energy, and how that is so similar to women. We often think of self-care for women, self-care in more feminine spaces, but really self-care and healing is universal. And so I so appreciated his perspective and the conversation that we had. Another conversation that has really left a profound impact on me is with this woman. Her name is Audrey Ori, and she's a publisher. She has a publishing house called 13th and Joan. She's phenomenal. We had a wonderful conversation on why now more than ever, we really need to document our own stories,
Mm.
and how powerful it is to take control of your narrative and write it down, paint it out, dance it out. I think especially in the last year, we're learning, write down how you're feeling, write down what you're experiencing, and it's so powerful. And for me, it just really confirmed, our conversation really confirmed for me why I do this second podcast, Stories of Inspiring Joy. I'm such a firm believer that we all have a story to share. We all have a voice that's really meant to be heard. And often we don't know that we are empowered to share our story. Sometimes we think, oh, it's reserved for like a celebrity or someone who's really well known or someone who has really undergone tremendous adversity. The truth is, your experience is important. What you experience every day, how you see the world, what has happened to you, how you move through it is important. And I think it's meant to be shared, because when you share your story, you have no idea the impact that really it's going to have, not only on you, but also on someone else. And so for me, that's really where Stories of Inspiring Joy comes from. And I mean, recently we just had this woman come on and share her story, and she actually did it with her counselor who helped her heal while she was, I think it was dissociative identity disorder. I believe that's what she was experiencing, or what she has. And the story they share of how they worked together and she healed, and how this woman who served as her coach through all of this, or her therapist, also has her own sense of healing through working with clients. I mean, it blew me away. There's been people who have come on and shared their music, like how they wrote their first album, and I was like, oh my God! Not only is your music so beautiful, but to hear the story of what inspired you to share your music in this way. I mean, it's blown me away. So those are just a few examples, but when I tell you, I am just so honored to share these stories and to have conversations with people. Sheila, you shared your story on Stories of Inspiring Joy, what brought you to writing Bootstraps and Bra Straps, and you have an incredible story. So for me, it's been a huge honor. And if you had told me this when I failed the bar the first time, that I would have been able to create 2 podcasts now that provide opportunities for connection and storytelling, I would have laughed. I would have said, no way. There's no way at all. So
Right.
it's been a huge honor. Absolutely.
That's your art. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this, all the things that you told me, all these different people you interviewed, it was how they were sharing their voice, their art, through writing, through art, through singing, through whatever they're doing to be an advocate for others, all those things. And I think about when we are children,
Mm-hmm.
we have that, we play. You think of the masculine energy, I don't know, and the feminine, it doesn't matter. Some of us I was a sports kid. I was very, I loved sports. I didn't want to be benched. I wanted to go play sports.
You wanted to be on the field.
I want to be on the field. I may not play well, but I want to go play. And so that was me. But the thing that happens is we grow up. We take a big test, we go to school, we get the job, and we forget to play. We forget to fuel our own souls. And then there's resentment because we've lost that. That's the joy, that essence, that really, if you love to swim, that's your release. That's your meditation and motion, whatever it is. If you give that up because you're a grown up, this crazy or some kind of rule, you can't dance anymore in public because that would look weird, or whatever it is, just, oh, you're off key, so what? If you want to sing. So
I think what you just said is so on point. And because often, when I think about, for me, the podcast came because I needed to seek my joy, truthfully. And the name of the show was inspired by a conversation I had with someone back in 2015. And he said, you need to seek your joy. You need more joy in your life. And at the time I thought, are you crazy? I'm in law school. I'm just trying to I'm trying to pass this bar exam. I'm just trying to become an adult, a serious adult, as you put it, which I think is so perfect, because we often think, when we reach a certain age, we have to be serious in order to be taken seriously. We think we have to present ourselves a certain way in order to be accepted. The truth is, who you were as a kid, what you love to do, if you loved playing, sports or rolling around in the mud or doing something with clay and Play-Doh, you were tapping into a part of yourself that was often, I think, the fullest expression of who you were, what you really loved, how you wanted to express yourself, how you wanted to share who you are with the world. And you're right, as adults, we forget that. And I certainly forgot that. And I think that's in part why I didn't pass the bar and why I had all these health issues, is because I was too serious. I was gripping way, way, way too hard and not letting myself be in the moment, not letting myself experience life, have joy, enjoy my life. And so I think, what I've learned, especially through the podcast, is if you can think about what you loved to do when you were younger, when you were a kid, what made you happy, what you could spend hours doing, if you can now incorporate that into your day-to-day life as an adult, you will be so much healthier, so much happier, and you will actually enjoy what you're doing. I had a conversation recently on Instagram Live with this woman. Her handle is The Playful Warrior. She's all about how we can incorporate play into our lives as an adult. And I loved it. It's about expressing your creativity and doing it without self-judgment. Like what you said, what are people going to think about me? Honestly, I'm at this point where it's who cares? If it makes you happy and you love it, keep going, keep doing it. That's really all that matters. So learning to bring joy and more play into your life as an adult, it's huge. It's so huge.
I think about relationship work when I work with couples. And what happens is they stop having that joy, the playfulness, the fun of a relationship. The dating stops, they get married, they have responsibilities, they have bills, children show up, and then they have to be parents and serious, and they've lost the most important thing. And the whole romance, the love part, is the laughter and the joy in the little things, in the real, taking a walk as a family together or as a couple, and enjoying those times and playing and having fun. That's what makes the relationship. And when that stops, it kind of dies, because it's just work, no fun. We have
Yeah.
to have some fun.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting, especially in the last year, people were taking walks as a family and
Yeah.
going out and playing board games and watching movies together. I mean, before last year, I can't tell you the last time I had played a board game. I mean, not in a really, really long time. So doing things that brought you together, especially with those you loved. I know a lot of people spent the last year alone, especially if you lived alone, which I mean, I can't even imagine. I feel very lucky that I was with my family, but bringing back that sense of play and connection and having fun together, it makes a huge difference.
And then teamwork, working with your teams, with business.
Yeah.
If you can bring fun, now we have to maybe start going back to the workplace instead of
Mhm.
the Zoom calls where we don't have to wear pants if we don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Now we have to get dressed up and go back to work. And people have gone through so much that
Mhm.
if there can be a team meeting that's just positive and
Yeah.
fun, if there
Yeah.
can be things like that, especially during this time, it's going to make all the difference in productivity, in people wanting to show up and feeling a sense of community at work
Mhm.
that we
Mhm.
really need. There's a lot of division right now on our planet as well. And so when we can come together, I think that's going to heal everything and cure all this crazy virus and everything else, is when we all come together. And
Mhm.
so that starts, I think, from home, then to work, to the community, ways that you can help other people. And the podcasts that we're doing right now, I believe everybody listens in and they hear what they need to hear, and it shows up in perfect time.
Hmm. I think so too. It's so interesting you brought up about work and productivity and returning to the workplace. I recently just had a conversation for Seek the Joy with Scott Shute. He's the head of mindfulness and compassion programs at LinkedIn.
Mm,
And my biggest takeaway from that conversation, he's all about mainstreaming mindfulness and operationalizing compassion, meaning bringing our mindfulness practices into the workplace so that we can show up as our full selves. And I think pre-pandemic, so many of us were not showing up as our full selves, especially at work. And you weren't bringing in what you were passionate about. You weren't bringing in your mindfulness practices, your self-care, your joy. And I loved my conversation with Scott because it's all about, if we can show up as our full selves in the workplace, we're
mhm,
not only going to enjoy it so much more, but then we just start to develop this greater self compassion. And compassion really has to also start at the top with leadership within any organization.
mhm.
And so that was just such a valuable conversation for me, especially as we begin this transition, moving back to a workplace and not being on Zoom calls as much, which that's going to be an adjustment in and of itself.
Yeah.
So there are so many incredible people out there who are really, I think, right now talking about exactly what you spoke of too. And I'm really lucky I got to have that conversation with Scott um, for Seek the Joy because, yeah, being able to step into mindfulness and compassion so we can change work and how we show up at work, I think it's going to usher in a new way of thinking and a new way of being, especially in the workplace, because I don't think people want to work the same way they were before. I think things are
No.
changing.
I think it's nice in a way for some people, it was really hard, but to be able to be home with the family, if you have
Yeah.
family, to share what you're doing for work
Hmm.
with your loved ones so they can kind of understand. Sometimes you show up at home and you're like, oh, this happened at work, but they don't have a clear understanding of what work really entails,
Hmm.
what it's like, what's required. And it's almost like if you have young children, they don't have an idea of what it's going to be like once you graduate.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that's, to me, that's a bigger education than
Yeah.
the textbooks and the stories. Also, like your inspired, the stories that you have where people
Mhm.
share their stories, those stories are the living history. We're in like some historic times right now.
Yes, we are.
And to understand these stories from a place where there's emotion,
Mhm.
where we're not, like you said, we're not holding our emotions in, and people are sharing what they experienced, what they went through, how they got back on track. And that inspires other people and helps them so they can share their story and
Mhm.
not hold it in.
Mhm.
And it just feels,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's a beautiful domino effect that happens when you share your story. And I'll share this story of that domino effect. It was about 4 or 5 months into having The Power of Storytelling, which is the series that inspired Stories of Inspiring Joy on Seek the Joy. And someone had come on and shared their story. And I got an email from somebody in Germany who said, "Hey, I just heard this person's story. It really resonated with me. Could I share my story?" And I said, "Please, like, I'd love for you to, of course, share your story." So a couple of months later, their episode goes live. They share their story. Somebody from Australia reaches out and says, "I heard this story. It was really inspired. It reminded me of this instance in my life. Can I share my story?"
Mm.
And I was like a year into doing this podcast. And I sat there and I was like, what? Like, you're telling me somebody in the United States shares a story which inspires somebody in Germany, which inspires somebody in Australia. Like,
Mhm.
it blew my mind. And I really understood in that moment the domino effect and how inspiring it is when you really, it takes a lot of courage, I think, and a lot of bravery to step into a space where you are sharing your story. We often fear what it means to be vulnerable. We fear judgment. We fear rejection. And so for someone to come on and share their story and for it to inspire somebody else to share theirs, I was like, this is it. This is why I'm doing this. And it all just sort of made so much sense to me in that moment, because we often think we're alone in what we're experiencing. We think nobody else has these emotions. Nobody else is been in a situation like this. I think especially if we feel isolated in what we're experiencing, we don't know that we're not alone. And so for me, one of the biggest, because there's so many, but one of the biggest takeaways from doing both podcasts over the last 3.5, almost 4 years, is this reminder that you are really never alone in what you're experiencing. And if you reach out a little bit and share who you are and share your story, it doesn't have to be on a podcast. It doesn't have to be online. It can be with a friend or just even in your journal. It will just heal you and heal others. And it will resonate so much deeper, I think, than you could ever imagine.
Yes, yes. And this is the art of storytelling. My
Mm-hmm.
elders, when I had my grandparents and they're my grandma's little friends, and they were these older ladies, and they were from different, Los Angeles, California. So we had people from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we had one lady that survived a concentration camp, lost a lot of her family members, found her siblings later. And
Wow.
we had another lady from Greece who her husband passed away, and she took over the business at a time where that was like totally frowned upon. And
Mm-hmm.
she had to deal with all that. And
Yeah.
all these different people, there was about 5 older ladies, and they would sit down and have tea and tell their stories. And I was this little girl, and I'd listen in.
Mm.
I think, oh, these stoic, incredible women, they have not lost their feminine. They are so in their truth, and they're at that age where they were beyond caring what people thought.
Mhm.
And there's a certain age where you just don't care anymore. You
Yeah.
go into that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I wonder what my adventure is going to be. I wonder what my
Mhm.
story is going to be. But those stories stayed with me. And literally, those ladies were like the grandparents for my children until they all passed away. We had Thanksgiving together, we
Wow.
had Christmases together. They were my extended family. And so that was something I kept those stories. I wanted my children even to hear the real history, the lived
Mhm.
history, the real experiences. And it made such a difference and an impression on me. So
Wow. I
this is
love that.
keeping the tradition alive with sharing
Mhm.
stories. And
Mhm.
in our culture, we don't have that as much here with everything being apart. And now we're sharing global stories. We
Mhm.
got all these different countries and they're
Mhm.
sharing stories. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you just shared because it's also about how does your individual story fit into this collective story? And I think especially with the last year with COVID and there were multiple pandemics really occurring at the same time, um, how does your story fit into this global story? And we all document it in our own way. Some of us write, some of us podcast, some of us write music. I try and document, my family used to always laugh at me, but I try and document as much as I can with my phone,
mhm,
with videos and pictures. And my grandpa passed away in October 2020. And one of the most healing things for me has been going through this sort of album
mhm,
of photos and videos and voice notes and voicemails and just things that I documented that I know I would carry with me, for the rest of my life. So the ability to document your experience, document your story, and share it with others, it's just such a beautiful gift. And I hope that we continue to do it because we need to. We need to document what we've experienced and what those of us around us have experienced too. I think it's so important.
Definitely. Now, as a person that is doing so much, an advocate for everyone else, what do you have to share with the audience? What tips do you have if they are also taking on a lot of different things on really how to, I don't know, I don't know if it's balance, but manage it all?
Yeah, it's so funny. For a long time, I thought, oh, I can balance everything. And then I realized personally, I don't know if I have balance. Like, I don't know if balance is a thing. I think we have like these buckets that I sort of spoke about earlier, and you label them based upon what is a core value or something that is important to you. And then you kind of have to decide, okay, how much am I going to fill in this bucket today? How much am I going to fill from this one? Do I need to take from one and fill it in the other? For me, that's really what I've had to do to be able to manage. I love the word manage because it really is about managing everything that is important to me in any given moment. And I am not an expert at it. I continue to learn. I continue to learn from those around me and from those I get to speak to through the podcast. But what has really helped me, and hopefully this will help others as well, is just making a decision sort of every day as to what I want to fill in each bucket, like how much I want to fill in each bucket. So, for example, tomorrow, I know it's going to be a really, really busy work day. I will not be doing anything for, the podcast at all. It's really just about work. And then I know as the week goes on, I know, like, for example, on Thursday, I really want to make, touching base with my friends and, calling somebody up and, touching base and how is everybody? That's for me is a priority. So just managing my time in a way where I'm prioritizing things, figuring out how much I want to fill each bucket. For me, that has been huge. And writing everything down. This is like I'm so old school in the sense that I have a calendar that I write things down in, right?
Yep.
Like I don't just use the iCal on my phone. Like I
Me
you
too.
have you too. Like I have to write everything down. So I know, what I'm working on, what I, need, how I need to prioritize my time. Otherwise, it is just pure overwhelm. So writing it down, deciding how I'm going to fill in those buckets. And then this is the key for me, knowing it's not going to go that way, like knowing it's not going to be exactly how I planned, knowing it's not going to be perfect, and just kind of going with the flow and knowing I can carry something over to the next day too. So taking away sort of that inherent pressure that I certainly put on myself. I know plenty of other people do that as well. That for me has been important, but I don't know if there's balance. Like I think you just kind of decide how you want to allocate your time and your energy, and you sort of figure it all out from there. Sometimes you got to take things out of the equation too. Like if it's too much, don't be afraid to take away. I think sometimes we think if we've committed ourselves to something or we're working on something, that means we have to keep doing it. Sometimes it's important to take away and to remove, and you can always add it back in. Always add it back in later.
That's so good. Now, if you were to be able to go back in time and talk to yourself when you didn't pass that first test,
Mm-hmm.
at that rock bottom, what would you tell yourself? What message would you give yourself to keep going?
It's such a good question. Two things. I would tell myself to relax. I would say it's okay. You're okay. This will all work itself out. I think especially when we're in a moment of adversity or rock bottom or we're facing some sort of roadblock, we think that's it. I'm done. For me, that was like a huge door slamming in my face. And most of the time in law school, they don't talk about people who have to sit for the bar multiple times. It's like you sit for the first time. If you don't pass, sorry, good luck to you. Like that's kind of the messaging. And if I could go back, I would change that as well. But, often we think when something comes our way, it's a roadblock, a door in our face, that means it's over. You just got to figure out a new way to open that door and figure out a way to turn that roadblock, chip it away, and make it a stepping stone for yourself. So I would tell myself to relax. It's all going to come together, and don't be afraid of this moment. This moment, what you're experiencing, how you're choosing to sit in it, is what is going to be your biggest inspiration and allow you to step forward in your most true and authentic way. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
All right. And we are coming to the end of our time. So I'd love for you to share where people can connect with you and listen to your podcast.
Yeah, well, first of all, Sheila, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy when we get to connect. So thank you. This was so much fun. If you want to tune in to Seek the Joy podcast or Stories of Inspiring Joy, just search Seek the Joy wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We're at seekthejoypodcast.com and at Seek the Joy Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. It's all there. And from that Seek the Joy website, you can also access Stories of Inspiring Joy as well. And if you want to share your story, there is an interest form on our website as well to submit your story to be part of Stories of Inspiring Joy. So that's where you can find me and everything Seek the Joy and Stories of Inspiring Joy.
All right. Well, thank you again, Sydney.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for those tuning in, we'll be back after these messages. Stay tuned. Of work patterns. I'd like to introduce you to Adam, and he's going to share more about work patterns. All right, welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, I guess.
Yes, and so I'd love to hear about how work patterns was created.
Sure. Yeah, the idea around work patterns came about, from my point of view anyway, having struggled with the problem myself at a previous company. Where I was part of starting a company at a very early stage. And at that point, we were 3 people, and then we grew to 700 people over the years. And obviously, as that happens, there's a lot more complexity that comes in. Operating the business becomes more challenging. There are miscommunications, information flow that needs to happen. You have new people joining and people leaving. And management becomes really difficult. Managers have needs of their team in mind, and they often have their own work that they're trying to get done. And it's a very complicated job. And I just found that there weren't a lot of tools designed specifically to help managers be great managers, try to keep track of everything across their team in one place. And so that was really the idea around work patterns. And yeah, as you alluded to, we start with that weekly one-on-one meeting. And then we help provide a collaborative agenda for that helps managers and their direct reports keep track of action items and things of that nature. Also, some of the more high value activities like giving and receiving feedback and recognition and goal setting. So yeah, kind of everything a manager needs in one toolkit.
That sounds incredible and something that is very needed. Now, at what point would a business really look into a system like this?
Anytime there is we think about it as a unit of at least 5 or 10 people. So from the beginning days of starting work patterns, we used our own product to help manage the operations of the company. Anytime a manager is managing 4 to 5 people, that's when the informal systems kind of fall apart. And you need to be a little bit more intentional and thoughtful about how you're keeping track of each employee, what your commitments to them are and what their commitments to you are, and making sure you have good open communication. And so that's really where we step in. That kind of one manager and 4 or 5 direct reports. That can obviously be in a much larger organization. I think of it as a team unit.
Yes, and I work with a lot of smaller businesses that are at that point where they need something like what you have to offer with your program, because they're working so hard trying to manage everybody, and then they forget recognition. Communication goes away. People are upset because it's not clear what they're supposed to do or the prioritization. Right. And this is where there's so much stress, and then the talent gets wasted on trying to manage this type of situation instead of everybody using their talents to make the business grow more and just have work be a fun place again. So it's not the managers that benefit, it's actually all the employees, everybody on the team is grateful when something like this shows up where they don't have to approach a manager because things weren't clear.
That's right. Yeah, we actually see a lot of times that it's not always the managers that start using work patterns inside an organization. It's the people who are kind of, quote unquote, managing up. and want, and kind of it's a way to say, hey, this is how I want to be managed, because I want to know what is expected of me. I want to make sure that I'm getting feedback on a regular cadence so I can improve. And then once a manager sees that, it's like, oh, this would be a much easier way to manage all of the people across my team and have that consistency and not have to try to remember, oh, did I do this with this person? What did I say I was going to do with that person? All that in one place. So you don't have that, like you said, that just stress and mental overhead that just sucks the energy and life out of you as a manager.
I remember I had 5 gift stores years ago, and I ran them for 17 years. This was before programs like yours showed up. And I spent hours every week working with the team, and I had lists and everything was on paper. I would love to have this. I had to have extra managers to help and lots of meetings to actually get things done and make sure that we're great. I mean, I had over 200 employees, five retail stores that were 5,000 plus square feet. And it was a lot of work. When you have new people coming on board, how do they make this transition?
Answer that in sort of the pulling off of your story, where the evolution of this space has kind of gone from paper, like a lot of this was kept track in paper notes, and obviously paper notes that relies on you to go back to check on them. Then the next evolution was sort of what I'd call like horizontal software solutions. So something like a Google Doc or something like that. That's not really purpose built for the specific use case. It's just it's a way to make that paper digital, but it's not purpose built for people management or a specific use case like that. And now we think we're kind of in the third generation where we want purpose-built tools for the specific job that we're trying to do. And in this case, people management allows us to think through these cases that you mentioned. Like if you have a new employee joining the team, what template should you use to onboard that person? What are the things that you should be talking about early on? Why we offer templates in the product. So we have kind of like an onboarding template.
I can only imagine there must be some type of studies or idea of the change that happens when somebody first onboards with your program and maybe a few months into it, once they get things up and running. What are the differences that people share with you? What are they finding with this program?
There was obviously a pivotal point that we all saw back in March of 2020 when all of a sudden every company basically went to a hybrid or remote working arrangement. Big thing that we saw, the informal systems that people were using for people management that weren't so great even then, totally fell apart. And what an example of that would be like, oh, I don't need a one-on-one because I could just drop by someone's desk when there's something to talk about, or I'll just bump into them in the hall or something like that. So that'd be an informal way of handling it. And those serendipitous encounters are great, but they should never have been relied upon as the basis of the relationship. The employee manager relationship is the fundamental building block of any organization. What we're seeing in our space is similar to what many industries are seeing, in that it's sort of like pulling the future forward. Companies are realizing that if they have more intentional systems and are more thoughtful about adding the right amount of structure, right? You don't want a whole lot of bureaucracy and red tape and things like that. But if you have the right amount of structure, if you're documenting things, if you're getting reminders or setting up reminders for things, it takes a lot of the stress out of and a lot of the chaos out of operating. And that allows us to then have this more hybrid arrangement where, we can have our synchronous time where we're spending it together and aligning on things. And then that gives us flexibility to be remote or work different hours or whatever work when we're more productive.
Well, and I think you're able to see workflow better. So, sometimes managers tend to give everything to one and not enough to another. And so this kind of helps, I would imagine, balancing workflow and getting some feedback on what needs to change, maybe on the team side, if something isn't working out, why, so you can find out and you have a trail of what's happening so that if anything needs correction, you can go back to that. And
totally. Yeah.
That's where you can reward people on the team and also make adjustments needed to make it easier. That's great. That's incredible. Well, thank you for sharing. And for those tuning in, we'll be back after these messages. All right. Stay tuned.
If you are just tuning in, this is Sheila Mack, host of NBC's Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And today I have a special gift for beautiful, authentic you. For a free Boots meditation and mini introduction to the Boots formula course, go to www.sheilamac.com/Boots meditation. That's www.Sheilamac.com/Boots, BOOTS meditation, and enjoy your free gift, which is a free Boots meditation class as well as a mini introduction to the Boots formula course. Enjoy. I'm Sheila Mack with the Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. Mark your calendars. We have Jay Abraham, the legendary Jay Abraham, and he will be our featured guest on the show Monday, May 10th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Jay is our $21.7 billion man and our highest paid marketing consultant. So if you have a question for Jay, message me at www.dearsheila.com and tune in Monday, May 10th. So here it is, my latest book. I have to let you know something, just between you and me. This book is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation. To grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.